covered up the skies. Our vision began to materialize. Her loving arms beckoned us. Our ears began to ring. Knowing or believing, no longer meant a thing. It was the mothership. It was the mothership. It was the mothership.
All right, hola everyone. Welcome to Project Compass, everyone. I am your host, just one of your hosts, Dave Cruz, along with Mr. Mark Eddy. You can follow the show on Twitter at Project Compass X. The hashtag is Project Compass. And tonight we got a great show for you tonight. We have Mr. Dennis Stone and America Stonehenge. For those of you who are not in the know, of course you wouldn't be if we didn't tell you so. We do have a new Facebook page, and that is Project Compass. And let me bring in Mr. Mark Eddy right now, and we'll talk a little bit about that some more. How you doing tonight, Mark?
Fine. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing well. My mother is doing good, and that's why I'm happy right now.
Well, I think everyone else in the audience is happy for you, and your mom as well. Let's just keep her getting better.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, that was a little scary, whenever your loved one goes into surgery or, they're doing a procedure that's really, really scary and important, so I'm really happy that everything turned out well, and now she's just recovering, and that's what I'm really happy about. But anyways, yeah, let's talk a little bit about tonight, and we're going to get Dennis on here in a bit, so I'll go ahead and let you usher in Mr. Dennis Stone, if you will.
Yeah, Dennis, made his debut with you, a couple years ago, and your loyal listeners at Beyond the Strange had a good time. We worked together to put all those images up on your gallery site. We did the same thing today. Looks really, really nice. What you did. We're gonna have some images for the audience to go to. But anyhow, your listeners have come over to support us on Project Compass, and Dennis is making his debut with us tonight. Since Dennis has been a guest, we don't have to go into all the specifics of the place. All the audience is familiar with them. So I think we're going to go into more a detailed analysis of the site. So I think we're going to have a little bit more of a behind-the-scenes look at America's Stonehenge. So, hey, Dave, how are we doing with getting Dennis on?
I'm working on it right now, and we should be getting him very, very soon. So let's hope for the best. Oh, I love this live radio stuff. For those of you that don't know, there is a new Twitter, and it's horrible. That's all I have to say is it's really, really bad. So let me. I'm going to try something here, Mark. So if I lose you, I'll call you back in a second. Okay?
Okay.
Let me see if I can do this. It's really bizarre how they have this. And yeah, let me Let me just do this real quick and see if we get this going.
Yeah, it's
Mark, you there? All right.
here.
So, do I have both gentlemen on here now?
I think just me. The alien puppet might count as two. I think we have Dennis.
I think we have Dennis. Dennis, are you there?
I am here. Good evening.
Hey, okay.
Hey, right. I did something right.
There's a little technical glitch there. We could blame it on the nor'easters.
Yeah. Number 3.
Yeah, Dennis, you're not a stranger to Dave and me, and yeah, I was just telling the audience, we don't have to go over the basics of America's Stonehenge. We might want to just start off with a little, just a general overview, but I think the audience would probably like to hear some updates since you were on a couple years ago, and you've had you've retired as being an airline pilot. You've had a chance to some new projects, looking at the serpentine walls. So there are more things to move the conversation forward. So, first of all, what is going on with America's Stonehenge and the 2 nor'easters and the third one making its way towards southeastern New Hampshire right now?
Well, we'll find out tomorrow. But I want to thank both of you for having me on this evening. It's nice to hear Dave again. It's been a couple of years since I was on the show. So thank you very much for having me on. And we're all a little bit nervous about it. We've had 3 bad storms recently. It caused a lot of damage to the trees. Fortunately, none of the structures, the walls were damaged, but we had a lot of very large trees and a lot of limbs come down, and then of course we lost power for several days. But it was all over the Northeast, and then tomorrow it's going to hit the Northeast again pretty hard, and the coastal regions are really worried about flooding and tides. They just went through a real mess down here along the coast of New England, and I think going down into New York area. So yeah, we got a lot of maintenance. We have about 110 acres up there, a lot of trails. We have snowshoe trails too, and we have been snowshoeing again, but it took me 4 days just to open up the trails again with a snowmobile and a car with a chainsaw. My son even helped me out. It was just a real mess. The only good thing is some of the, as you mentioned, some of the serpentine walls and some of the other features up there actually are becoming more obvious. You can see them better as we remove some of the brush and some of the debris. So I guess that's the good news of that. And they really stand out because over the years the forest has grown since the 1938 hurricane, which knocked down a lot of the woods up there. We have photographs from before that time and during that year when the hurricane hit the Northeast. And the forest has grown back, and it concealed a lot of the structures and everything, and a lot of the walls. You just really couldn't see them that well. And they were hiding some pretty interesting features out there. So in the last couple of years, as you mentioned, we found a number of kind of surprises up there on the hill, So the research is continuing. And since I retired 2 years ago, we found basically 4 different things going on the site that we were not really aware of before.
Okay, so describe, are these serpentine walls characteristic of Native American building? Could they be colonial? Just give us a description. Dave has a photo on the Beyond the Strange website if people want to go over there and take a look at them.
Right, yeah, that's a picture of one of them that we've gone by the wall. We've been open for many decades and never really paid particular attention to the shape of the walls necessarily. We were looking at mostly some of the monoliths that we found out aligned with the sun, moon, and stars. We were very, very interested in that. And we knew the walls were there. We thought perhaps years ago, we thought the walls might be some sort of a boundary around this ritual or sacred site we call America's Stonehenge today. And the wall patterns are very, very unusual. And we've checked old deeds and boundaries. We've had a professional surveyor that worked there during the 70s and into the 80s. And in fact, we had a meeting with him just about 2 years ago about doing some more work up there. And these walls just don't fit old boundaries. They do contain a lot of slab work or fractured stones that are actually part of the bedrock. So whoever built these walls are actually taking pieces of the bedrock and using that to help build the walls. And some of these rocks ended up being some of the astronomical alignments. Some became in what we call orthostats, which are big slabs of stone stood on their end in the wall. And in New England, there's just so much rock, you don't need to make rocks. And that's what these people were doing. They're actually making these slabs. They were kind of laughing about that last year when we were doing a tour with some people. It's like, why would anybody go out of their way to make stones in New England, There are just so many of them. You actually try to get rid of them by building walls. So you see all these rounded type field stones in most of our historic walls, which started being built in the late 1600s. And in the 1700s, it really took off, a lot of wall building. But, these walls are different, too. Some of these walls are just, they'll run like 30 feet in length, and that's the first actually serpentine wall I found almost 2 years ago. I've been by it for many, many years. My dad lived on that particular pathway that goes by it. His house was at the end of it on Havel Road, but that's the way we would go through the woods to get to his house, either by walking, snowmobile, or ATV, and I happened to look at it one day. It caught my attention. And I said, gee, that looks very unusual. I've seen that wall before, but I really never, stopped and looked at it. And I got off and looked at it. And I said, I think this is a serpent wall. And I had never really heard of serpent walls. I've heard of serpent mounds like the one in Ohio, but this is actually a stone wall with a kind of a head. It ran about 30 feet along this ridge of bedrock, so it's sitting right on top of bedrock, kind of a ridge. It drops off next to it, and it runs in a southwesterly direction, northeasterly direction, with a head facing southwest. And it had kind of an oval tail, which kind of thought of immediately sort of like a rattlesnake. And then I showed it to some people at that time. 6 months later, we were at a meeting, an archaeological meeting in Massachusetts, and I saw a book. We picked it up, and it was showing all these different stone features down in a town called Stonehenge, Connecticut. There's something like 8,000 features. And one type of feature happened to be serpentine walls. And I'm looking at a couple of them going, that looks like what we found up at our site. Because after that, we started finding more. There are about 400 of them in Stonington. They run from 30 to 100 feet in length. Some are linear or straight. Some are rectilinear. They have like a 90-degree bend at the head or tail. Actually curved, kind of like a big zigzag or S-turn. And most of them are straight or rectilinear down in Connecticut. And we kind of found the same thing over the last 2 years now. We have probably about 12 of these serpentine walls. And a couple of them are straight, a couple are zigzag, and then one of them actually goes around the entire hill, which is the most recent find. And it runs about a half a mile. And it was really quite a surprise when we finally looked at the structure, because we've been looking at it since we opened the site up to the public in the late 50s. And we always talked about the structure having 50 similar structures to it in New England, but we really didn't know what we were looking at. I think it's the head of a serpent. And behind it, the wall actually goes up and down, kind of undulates, and then it goes around and touches every astronomical alignment, all the sunrise and sunset markers on the hill, which we really didn't pay much attention to either. And then it comes back in front of itself, and it does one more up and down undulation-like, and then it does a 90-degree twist with its tail. It looks like it's biting its tail. And once you see it, it's like, oh my God, it's a big, gigantic serpent, It's looking right at you, So that was pretty cool.
And Dennis, these walls that end with a boulder that does look like a snake's head, like there might be a crack that um, could give the appearance of a snake's mouth. Yeah, those are also characteristic of New England's uh, wall buildings, wall structures built by Native Americans. Is that right?
Well, that's been a big question. What did Native Americans do as far as wall building? And it seems like there is some historical record of the Native Americans getting involved with walls, even though when I grew up, Native Americans were not supposed to have been altering the landscape, building walls, building structures or ponds. Mostly what you find from Native Americans was their living site, their village, and you'd find like perhaps the wigwams, the post moles or the wigwams. You'd find some household utensils, maybe some weapons, maybe some tools, pottery, that kind of thing. And then the ceremonial sites are what some people think these walls and stone chambers are. This is a place where they went to worship, that they're ritual. And that's a whole kind of different mindset than when I grew up, So maybe the Native Americans are definitely involved with this. But there seems to be kind of a little bit of a European influence, too. If you look at some of the structures, the size, shape, orientation, and certain structural features, you'll see a very strong resemblance to some of the 50,000 megalithic sites in Western Europe, Those megalithic sites in Europe actually continue into Russia, China, India, and Korea had about 100,000 of them. So they're in South America, they're in Africa, they're in Australia has a couple, too, which I just became familiar with, what we call a megalithic-type site. So it seems to be almost a worldwide, phenomenon. And maybe the Native Americans, we know out west, Native Americans built something like 200,000 mounds. Some of these are pyramidal, some of these are effigy mounds shaped like animals or people or different shapes, including the serpent mound in Ohio. So we definitely know Native Americans are interested in the serpent. And in New England, that's still a question mark. I got a feeling they were highly involved with this, and the serpent would certainly be part of their spirituality, I guess. But the serpent could be something representing something in the heavens, perhaps like there's a constellation called Draco, the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And we think our site's about 4,000 years old from a number of different dating methods we've used on the site. And at that time, 4,000 years ago in Draco, there was a star called Thuban, or Alpha Draconis. It's not the brightest star, although it says Alpha Draconis. It should be the brightest. It's not. But 4,000 years ago and going back close to 6,000 years ago, it was a pole star. And many ancient religions thought that was one of the gateways to heaven. So during the course of the night, Draco would be spinning up around that pole star, its own pole star. And then very slowly, due to the Earth's precession, which is that 26,000-year cycle, it would no longer be the pole star, and then eventually Polaris becomes the pole star today, and then 13,000 years there's a star called Vega will be the pole star, and then it goes in a big circle back around again. So they might have been looking at the heavens. It might have been inspiration for this. There are other mounds, the Serpent Mound in Ohio. I believe your state, Mark, has a serpent kind of a mound.
It's made out of stone, and supposedly in Ashland, Kentucky, there's another stone mound.
Oh, it's a serpent, kind of a serpent one, I think, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Those should be publicized. I mean, unless they're trying to protect them from vandalism and from people disturbing them, but they'd be kind of nice to know about them, and because the one in Ohio is pretty world famous. There's one in Kansas that was on Scott Walter's show, and one in Scotland, and then there's one in Ontario, Canada, and I'm sure there's more that I haven't even heard about, But the serpent seems to be something, Adam and Eve in the Bible. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey had one of the rooms called the Serpent Room, and you can see the serpent kind of shape on the stonework. And I remember going to Delphi in 1985 in Greece, and Apollo was killed Python. And then they had the Pythian worship after that. And so maybe the modern Olympics are based on that kind of a little bit, because they had celebrations of the greatest athletes every 4 years over there, I guess. So serpents around the world, so it's not just one culture, though.
Dennis, isn't there also like a snake river or a serpent river?
Yeah. I think so too. Yeah, I think there is. Yeah, I'm trying to think where it is. I think I've heard of that. But
Yeah, Evil Knievel
Mark
tried.
might know.
Evil Knievel did some kind of like rocket jump over the Snake River.
I remember that in the 70s, right? Like 73, somewhere around that, 72, 73. I remember that was kind of, maybe in the mid-70s, I guess it was. Yeah,
Yes.
I think you're right.
So there's
I guess he ended up I guess he survived it with a parachute, I guess. But that was I remember that. I remember watching that happen on TV. You know,
that was
it
nuts.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
So-
pretty crazy. Really cool though. But yeah, it does seem like
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
lot of there's a lot of serpent symbology and worship, especially with the Hopi Indians and the mound builders. It just goes throughout history, especially in the Aztec culture. Could there be any type of correlation with the Aztec, the way they built their buildings and walls and so forth, as anything related to the American Stonehenge?
What the Aztecs is, I mean, they may, and I remember my dad and I went down there, and we went down there a couple times and I met my wife, and then we went down to the Yucatan. But in Mexico City, we saw a lot of the Aztec, ruins. That was probably around 83, so that's a little bit, I wish I should go back there. We went to the Anthropological Museum, and it was really great. I should have paid more attention to the snake bed at that time because we didn't have any idea we had anything that might represent a serpent at our site. But I know the Mayans, we've been to Chichen Itza. We were there in the 80s. We went to the El Callisto, the castle there, with the 91 steps on each side, representing quarters of the year, and then the last step on top, the 365 days. But on the fall equinox, the serpent goes down the staircase, I guess. I wasn't there for that event, but I walked up that, and I guess now you can't even go up the temple. They keep people off it, I was told recently.
Right.
Before we climbed up it, It's pretty steep and pretty kind of a little nerve-wracking getting up there. But one of our serpent walls on the west side, it's one of these ones that zigzags, and it's got a beautiful stone triangular head and a tail, and it has an orthostat, but it has one stone fallen. That's the equinox sunset, and it's the only thing that touches that. So there seems to be a little theme with the equinox and the serpent at our site, as well as at El Callisto down in Chichen Itza, And there's some artwork in Colorado at the Pathfinder Cave, and another one called the Crack Creek Cave, both in Colorado. In California, there's a site called Mojave North, and they have I guess they're petrograms. I think they're paintings, and there are some carvings. The ones in Colorado, I think, are carvings. The one in California, I'm trying to remember if it was actually a painting or a carving, but it has the equinox sunlight going through, illuminating on the equinox the actual painting or inscription, and the inscription has a serpent on it. So it seems to be, again, an equinox with a serpentine kind of, theme going on there, And my next stop, hopefully, will be out to Chaco Canyon to try to see that. But I heard that there's something to do with the serpent there, too. But I've heard of the serpent dances, too, the ceremonies with the serpents. I think some people still practice that today. But the Egyptians had the cobra, as you mentioned, the Aztecs and the Maya, and then even in South America. So the Aztecs, the serpent seemed to be a big thing, and we had no clue that we had even one at our museum. But they actually go from our museum down into Connecticut. There's over 400. They're in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, out near Woodstock, New York, in that area near Bethel, where the 69 festival was. And if you go out to Colorado, in the eastern part of Colorado, a lady named Becky did one of the meetings by Skype. And she was talking after the gentleman that introduced the Connecticut serpents and the different structures. She was on the next hour talking on Skype, and I wish I could have talked to her, but she showed one particular serpent, and it looks just like the one that you have posted today. It has almost exactly the same type of head, and it's kind of a linear, it kind of goes back kind of straight behind it. And my wife and I kind of almost stood up when we saw it. I said, that's ours, So 2,000 miles away in Colorado, there's a number of features, including U-shaped walls, cairns, chambered cairns, and serpent walls all the way out there that kind of have a resemblance to what we have up here, in the Northeast. And that we became aware of that just about a year ago.
Right. I want to remind everyone listening, either on the Fringe or on Spreaker or on the webpage, wherever you're listening to the show right now, you can go to beyondthestrange.com, click on the gallery tab where we have these pictures. We're going to go into more detail with these pictures in the second half of the show. But, for now, I just wanted to redirect people once again. And you can see, I think it's like the third picture down. Actually, it's quite a bit down. But you can see the serpentine wall that Dennis is talking about right now. And we got about 3 minutes before we have to pause for the cause, gentlemen. Mark?
Okay. Dennis, when America's Stonehenge was built, it was the hill was basically a peninsula at that time. You had a river wrapping almost all around, three sides of the base of the hill. What do you think there was any role that water played in choosing that location to build structures?
Yes. We've done a lot of different study on that to see what the water levels were. And 4 miles south of us is the Merrimack River, one of the biggest rivers in New England. And then a tributary of that, actually 2 different tributaries come up on the east side of our museum and on the west side of our museum. And it did kind of surround it. And at that time, the hill was probably fairly bare. It was just a big, bald hill, not too many trees on it. And probably could be sighted as you came up the river. You would be able to see this hill from a distance. And probably one of the reasons they chose it, because it was in the water. It was very, very important to these people, I think. Even in Christianity, the baptism with water and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
even in modern times, So I think they probably did play a part of that, yeah.
Okay, and were there, when the site was started about 4,000 years ago, was it full of trees like it is, like a forest like it is now?
Yeah, we think it's pretty bare. In the 1990s, archaeologist, the president of the New Hampshire Archaeological Society, she's still with us since 1989, but by 91 she started a shovel test pit study, 50-centimeter diameter holes. She went down to hit bedrock or glacial soil, or what we call a pre-occupational level, where nothing below that was, used by human, human had any effect on it. So after she ran about 80, a little over 80 of these, her husband was a doctor of geology from Tufts University for 30 years, so she had a good geological background too, and she traveled with him often with the university to Egypt and Alaska and all over the place. But she said she felt that the hilltop was 75% bare 4,000 years ago, about 75%, so it was a pretty open hill, bedrock exposed.
Okay. Dave, do you want to take a break? We're just about at that time.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and take a pause for the cause, as they say, and we'll be right back. This is Project Compass. I am Dave Cruz, along with Mark Eddy, and we are speaking with Dennis Stone, and we're talking about America's Stonehenge. Don't go away, everyone. We'll be right back right after this.
See them in the stars at night. There after Earth's creation, saw Mother Nature born. Watched the continent rising through the cosmic storm. Landed on a magic island, set up their new home. Floated down from the firmament, they came to move from pole. Time travelers, faster than the speed of light.
KTLK Digital Broadcasting, thefringe.fm, Napa Valley, California, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
You guys rock.
Live weekdays on the Fringe FM. It's Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Monday through Friday at 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern. The Fenton Perspective with Lori and Fenton. Mondays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. Project Compass with Mark Eddy and Dave Cruz. Mondays at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. Lighting the Void with Joe Vroop. Tuesdays and Wednesday nights at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. Big Picture Science from the SETI Institute. New Tuesdays at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. Wednesdays at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. The Kurt Green Hour. Wednesdays at midnight, 3 a.m. Eastern. The Paranormal Code with Rich Giordano. Thursdays at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. Shift Happens with Gigi and Cortana. Friday at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern.
Is it live?
Live weekdays on the Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk. On the Fringe FM app, TalkStream Live, tune in, and online at thefringe.fm.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, guess what? TalkStream Live has just released a new paranormal app exclusively for the paranormal community called Paranormal Radio. Paranormal Radio has a great selection of streaming talk shows dealing with UFOs, the supernatural, sacred geometry, NDEs, and much more, including a network highly recommended, The Fringe FM. You can download Paranormal Radio right now from Google Play and the iTunes App Store.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
We are still getting strange on Sundays. Hey everyone, it's me, Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange Radio, letting you know we're on live Sunday nights right here on the Fringe FM. The Strange Sunday saga continues live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Listen on thefringe.fm or at beyondthestrange.com. Again, that's Sunday nights, 5 p.m. Pacific. See you there.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Come own the night with us. Hi there, this is Dave Scott, host of Spaced Out Radio. Every Monday through Friday, right here on KTLK, the Fringe FM, I'm going to lead you down a path of mystery, intrigue, and suspense. So whether you've seen a UFO, had a run-in with Bigfoot or Dogman, or had ghosts running around your house, this is the place to be. Spaced Out Radio, right here on KTLK.
Going down to Atlantis, through the Sargasso Sea. Going down to Atlantis, won't you come along with me?
All right, we're back for Another 90 minutes with Dennis Stone from America's Stonehenge. That was a quick 30 minutes. All right, Dennis, since your property has been professionally dated to 2000, about 2000 BC, that's going back to the Archaic period of America's prehistory. We've covered a little bit of archaic cultures, a little bit more of the Adena cultures when Jason Gerald was on talking about the giants. A lot of the archaic and Adena Hopewell peoples were known for finishing the mounds that were excavated in the 19th century. But your property seems to not have been finished. It actually seems to have been abandoned just suddenly. Do you have an explanation for why they just stopped work and went their separate ways?
Right, yeah. When we first got involved with the site back in the 1950s, we thought possibly the site was built, completed by the original builders, and then abandoned, probably used for some time, But in the 1980s, we actually found our first what we call quarried stone in its original quarried socket, and it was located over 300 feet from what we call the main site, which is the 1 acre where most of the stone structures are. And it was one of our staff members that was out having a picnic lunch by herself. And we had a gentleman, Dr. David Stewart Smith, who joined us in 1978. And David had instructed our staff to keep an eye out for stones that might be quarried stones, these big slabs of stones that may have been lifted off the bedrock, propped. And also to look at the edges of these slabs to see if there's any work that was done to them, like little kind of serrated edges where somebody might have been striking it with a hammered stone or throwing stone. And so this person was sitting out there in 1982 having a lunch, and she happened to notice she's sitting on this big rock that underneath her was actually elevated off the ground. And as she peered at it, she noticed the serrated edge on it too. And I guess she got down, looked at it, and said, "Oh, gee, it's propped up with a rock. It's got this serrated edge." She brought it to the attention to Dr. David Stewart Smith eventually. And in 1980, he saw it, and he said, "Gee, this is really interesting." And the next year in 83, they actually did an excavation in front of it. And on the bedrock, the rock had been lifted off the bedrock as they suspected, and it was lifted up artificially by another stone. And this put the stone up so that people could actually strike it and start to shape it, what we call dress the stone. And it was very similar to some of the roof slabs on the main site. The biggest roof slab we have today on the main site is about 14 tons. And we know where it came from. But it only was moved probably about 15 feet from its original place in the bedrock. And the sacrificial table, we identified, actually in the 1930s, they identified where it came from. It had been moved about 30 feet. So this stone was, several hundred feet from the main site. And that was the first one we found. And in 1983, they identified it. And there was a doctor, Gary Hume, the state archaeologist, came down and took a look at it and said unmistakably that it was actually being dressed by stone tools. It was a technique called percussion flaking. It's like making a gigantic arrowhead. So it was a Stone Age technology used to shape the stone, not a Metal Age or modern technique used to shape it. After that, they kept their eyes open for a few more of these, and they did identify a few through the 1980s and 90s. We found a couple. But it was since around 2012, when my son was working up there, when he had a semester in college break, he was up there chainsawing, reopening up the astronomical lines because they slowly start to grow over. And he actually found a couple more of these. So we said, oh, that's pretty interesting. So then after that, we kept our eyes open, and I think we have identified about 30 of these, and probably about 20 of them just in the last five or 6 years. So it really surprised us how many of these stones, some of them up to 1,000 feet and down the hill from the main site, and some of them are very large, and these are multi-ton stones. And they were working a fissure or crack in the bedrock, and somehow they were able to separate it. And the granite up here is foliated. It does come up in layers, but you have to really know what you're doing, and it takes quite a bit of work. And they were able to, raise up the stone without shattering it, prop it, and then they would start working on it with hammer stones. And so it really surprised us. We thought, wow, I think they had a much bigger project they were working on, and something happened. And so, no, we don't really know what happened to these people. We don't have an idea. But we do think that they had a bigger plan. It was a work in progress. And then for some reason they walked away. So was it warfare? Was it a climate change? Was it disease? But at that time, as you mentioned, it was the Archaic period, and it started going into the Woodland period shortly thereafter. So there's some sort of change in culture, something going on. And perhaps that had something to do with it, a change of lifestyle or something. It changed, and this site was abandoned. But it may have been used for many, many centuries, because we have some of the stones that were aligned with the pole star, and as the pole star started drifting from being polar to being circumpolar, they actually look like they set up markers to mark this, and it would have been a few hundred years later that this would have, that you would have been that noticeable for the pole star to become circumpolar. It would have been slowly getting more of like a wobble, if you will. And then we actually have around 1750 BC, they set up 2 more identifier stones. So they might have been there for a few hundred years using the site. Was it abandoned and then used later in time? That's a possibility from some of the carbon datings we have. But I think the quarried stones really were kind of a big surprise to us, that there were so many of them, and that they had an idea they were going to build a much bigger complex. And then, for some reason, that was it. They walked away.
Okay, and Dennis, when I was there, you showed me the 14-foot menhire stone that at some point seems like it probably toppled over and broke, but that's something that's visible. Dave has on the Beyond the Strange .com gallery section a couple samples of the stone they're probably at least 10 feet long. On the gallery page, were a lot of these stones just quarried right there on top of the hill?
Yeah, and like I mentioned, the sacrificial table and that 14-ton stone, one of the biggest ones we still have remaining on the site, were taken pretty close to where they are presently sitting, when they were built into structures. There were a couple other big groove slabs in the chamber in ruins, and another chamber that was right adjacent to it with even a larger stone that might weigh 8,000 or 9,000 pounds. We haven't found the quarry socket where they came out of yet, probably under some of the dirt on the site. So we thought most of the big slabs were taken adjacent to where they used them, in the structure, but we found a lot of, most of these 30 stones that we found, approximately 30, we mapped them last year using GPS, and we color-coded the map and everything. We still have a little more work to do on it, so you can kind of get an idea where they are laid all over the hilltop, the 110 acres. But like I mentioned, some of them are up to 1,000 feet from the main site, and they would have had to drag the stone from there up the hill, actually, to the main site. It wouldn't have been downhill or level. It would have been uphill. So that was kind of interesting, So that was a little surprise, too, that we know they were taking stones from the immediate area of where the chambers were built, but they looked like they were also looking at optimal places around the hilltop, because the hill had been pretty bare back then. They sent out crews and said, we need this size stone, and they went out and they scouted an area, found an ideal location, and then they were able to, raise the stone off the bedrock, and then they started working on it. And of course, the next step would be transporting it several hundred feet to, for building purposes. I it doesn't look like they're going to build out there. I mean, they might have had some idea they're going to build some satellite structures way out there, but we have no evidence of that at all. It looks like they might have wanted to bring them to the main site, you know. So that's still a work in progress for us too, you know. Just, you know, we're mapping on now, and I'm sure we're going to find more of these because slowly over time, about every 100 years, an inch of soil builds up in New England. Wind blow particles and vegetation decay, because on a hill there's erosion going on. So we have a lot of bare bedrock from the glacial period, and we have other areas of the hill where the soil's, you know, 30 inches deep. In some areas it's only a few inches deep, you know, but it's slowly covering up these slabs of stone are being slowly buried, if you will, and trees grow next to them and over them, and, you know, kind of covering them so you don't see them. So you have to kind of really look for them and say, oh, there's one over there, you know, and you go over and look at it, and sure enough, it's a raised stone with a propping stone under it, kind of hiding.
Okay. And that's when, as you've been talking about the percussion flaking, can you notice a difference between using a stone to shape another stone and a metal hammer to, you know, shape the stone, you know, with a chisel, or, you know, separate a part of a stone in the fissure to get it out of the quarry? You know, can you tell the difference between the two different mediums?
Yeah, apparently, I wish Dave Stewart-Smith could be here to talk. He just passed away a year and a half ago, but he had a lot of experience in that area of the way, you know, napping of, you know, projectile points and stone tools versus metal tools. And I guess he tried to describe it, it's a more blunter kind of strike, I guess. It leaves a little different impression in the stone if you took a, you know, metal maul or hammer and you were striking it versus, you know, a stone hammer. And we have found stone hammers. We have them in our collection. We have them on display. And I found a two-fisted one right next to one of these quarried stones, not too far from a structure we call the Watch House, and that was found about 2 years ago, where we were doing an excavation with that past president of the Hampshire Archaeological Society, and another helper too. So three of us working on that, and as we were going between two of these big stones, and one of them we found the whole side of it, the whole edge of it was all serrated where somebody had been bashing it. I found a two-handed, and that's now in our visitor center. I don't think I put it out on display yet. It's still in the collection. So stone tools such as hammerstones have been found there. So we have that evidence too.
Okay. Earlier in the show, you mentioned that a lot of these walls are 30 feet to 100 feet in length. I know you've been looking at, you know, the possibility of the megalithic yard being used at America's Stonehenge. Are those lengths like divisible by the megalithic yard?
Well, that's an excellent question, Mark. I think that's what we want to do now, is try to measure the walls, you know, either big bends in the walls or walls that just start and stop, you know, 130 feet, 100 feet, or whatever the length of it is. You're just in the middle of the woods, just, you know, like some of these serpentine walls will have a head. It can be like a glacial rock that looks like a head of a snake, and then the body of itself, either straight or curved, you know, curvilinear, and a stone tail. And then there's some interesting features along that wall that are kind of cool too. But we'd like to measure these very precisely to see if a megalithic yard was used in measuring this, because obviously when you make something, you know, carpenters and contractors, when they build a building or a bridge or anything, you know, you use a certain unit of measure. And when the first research began on the site in the 1930s, the gentleman named Mr. Goodwin was the guy that actually started the research, and he was an antiquarian, and he had different theories about who built the site, but he hired a crew, and one of the crew members got on board sometime after 1937. His name was Roscoe Whitney. He was an MIT engineer. And Roscoe, he was great at measuring things. He had a plane table. He got a picture of him standing there in the middle of the site with a plane table, and he's doing both profile and plan views of the structures. And he said he measured every structure, every foot of every structure and he said that either the builders of the site didn't give the word "damn" used, or they didn't know anything about linear measurements, because he did not know. He said they didn't use inches, they didn't use feet, they didn't use yards, they didn't use the old English rod. Nothing conformed to those measurements. And you would think that somebody building a site like, in the 1800s would use something that we use today, a measuring system that we use today. And yet none of the structures, none of the stones conform to that. In the 1970s, I made a diorama while I was in college of the about 30 acres of the site, and it contained the main site, the astronomical walls, and a little bit of the area beyond that, so maybe about 30 acres. And we went up and did a couple measurements on our own just so we could make the model more accurate. So I had some questions about some of the size of the structures. I wanted to try to make, it was a 1 inch equals 20 feet was the scale. And I wanted to make sure everything I had, was pretty accurate, and I was missing a little bit of information. So we went up and started measuring a few things. We were aware at that time of the megalithic yard, which is 32 inches, 0.64, or 2.72 feet. And a couple of things seemed to stand out as being a megalithic yard, and we thought that was pretty interesting. So I made the diorama over the course of a winter around 1976 and 77, I think it was. And then we really dropped it. We didn't really do much with the megalithic yard after that until more recently. A comment was made about the groove on the sacrificial table being 4 by 6 feet, and it could have been something that, somebody could add there in the 1800s, And in the fall, farmers would have professional come in, I guess, and butcher some of the animals for the winter's meat, and maybe that's what this thing was. Although the table may have been ancient, maybe it was repurposed for that purpose in the 1800s. Because the table does not have any metal tool markings on it, nor does its sockets. So that seems to be an ancient, table, But the groove could have been something, if it was 4 by 6, it would be English, and it could be something, made a few hundred years ago. So I went up the next day after hearing that, and I measured it. Something sounded wrong to me about that. So I measured the width of the groove, center to center, and I came out with 49 inches. And I said, well, that's pretty close to 4 feet. So, maybe that's correct. So I measured the length of it, and it came out to just under 67 inches. And what I did is I took my phone, put it on the calculator, and I divided 3264 into 49. It comes out to 1.5 megalithic yards. And then I did the long part of the groove, and it came out to 2 megalithic yards. And then the next day I went up with one of Dave's assistants, a guy named Pete, and we went up. He says, well, let's do the top. Let's do that again, because he's a landscape architect. He knows how to measure things pretty well. He went to the University of Boulder in Colorado and another school in New Hampshire, and he's been in this since the 80s, so he knows how to measure things. He does it for a living. So we measured that again, and my measurements were correct. And then we did the top. I said, well, I think it's rectangular. Well, it was under 41 inches, and it comes out to 1.25 megalithic yards, the top width of the rectangle. It's actually a trapezoid in shape. So then we started measuring the width of the table at the top and the bottom, and it comes out to 2.5 megalithic yards. And the height above the bedrock came out to 1 megalithic yard, not 36 inches, but just over 32.5 inches. So we started measuring the oracle chamber and various chambers there, and we found a couple of chambers are actually trapezoidal in shape also. The chamber in ruins and the one down what we call the patty chamber is trapezoidal, not rectangular. And we also found that there's core belling going on inside of more than the oracle chamber that we were aware of. We knew about that since we opened that the inside of the oracle chamber has kind of a core belling architecture to it. It's like the inverted staircase on the ceiling. As the wall goes up, it kind of goes in, sort of, but not a true arch. But those other chambers had core belling, and we really hadn't paid that much attention to them before, and we started looking at that. So we started getting measurements, and we're looking at the architecture of these structures, and it really was like, wow, that's something we hadn't seen before, or noticed, So the megalithic yard is important. The Upton Chamber is another chamber in Massachusetts, and I just saw a measurement taken in the 1980s of the width of that. It looks like a big igloo with a 15-foot tunnel that goes into it, and then it has core belling like a big beehive in the back side of it. In Europe, they call them a passage grave. Well, the width of that tunnel was 2.7 feet. So that was like, that's a megalithic yard. And this book I was just reading was written in 1989, and they just put that down. They didn't make any reference to a megalithic yard. I don't know if they weren't aware of it or they just left that out. But in New York, there's another Dolman in North Salem, New York, the same name as our town. There's 200 sites there, too, 200 what we think ancient structures. It's the highest density of structures in the Northeast. It's on the Hudson River in Putnam County, Westchester County, and in North Salem, New York, is Dolman. And I've been told that the legs of that are megalithic measurements also. So the megalithic yard is something that, is found in Europe. And Mark, you sent me some information about Mexico and in South America. And a professor talks about Shreveport, Louisiana, and Watkins Break finding 83 centimeter. And I did the conversion on my phone again. I said, well, what's 83 centimeters? And it comes out to 32.64 inches. That's a megalithic yard. So this thing may be not only in Europe and at our site and a couple of New England sites, but it might be in Central and South America. And I haven't seen anybody bring it up and, argue it one way or the other. I haven't seen anything on that, but I think that needs to be investigated.
Yeah, we've spoken, we're getting kind of close to, the top of the hour break. We can continue on the other side. But, it is interesting that, you do find the megalithic yard and like the Stonehenge area. But in that one article I sent to you, it was the same unit of measurement was found at it's like the base of structures found in Central America, as well as Poverty Point and the Watson Break area in Louisiana. So it's kind of like all over the world at about the same time.
Exactly, yeah. And that makes it a little hard, too, when we talk about the serpent walls. It seems to be many cultures. And then when you talk about the megalithic yard, it seems like it's on both sides of the ocean. I think there'll be more, we need more study on that, though, and also more measurement. And I think one way to go is that laser scanning, and that takes the subjectivity out of it. You go in with a laser scanner, and then you feed in different types of measuring systems and see what the answer is that comes out, and that takes out some of the guesswork and some of different people's opinions, so it should be much more scientific and more objective that way,
Yeah, well, it's just to back up for just a second, if the same unit of measurement was found at Poverty Point, Louisiana, Mexico, like around 2000 BC. Your place is, around the same time period. You kind of have to start wondering about migrations coming, or at least the ideas being brought up from the south. Possibly the people from the old world are making transatlantic crossings. So how many people are in different cultures are traipsing around America 4,000 years ago? It just doesn't sound like it's just coincidence. You find it all around the world.
Exactly. Yeah, I think if people came over from the Mediterranean area or Western Europe or Africa, they would have gone into South America. I think it's only 1,400 miles, and the currents will take you right there. And then if they had contact with people down there, either the diffusion slowly made its way up through Mexico into our area, or, they could have been coming up in boats too, But that would be the closest landfall from the old world, is South America.
Okay. Dennis, let's pause there. We'll get into transatlantic crossings on the after this break.
See them in the stars at night. There after Earth's creation, saw Mother Nature born. Watched the continent rising through the cosmic storm. Landed on a magic island, set up their new home. Floated down from the firmament, they came to move from pole. Time travelers, faster than the speed of light.
It's Jeremy Scott, and I'm the program director for the network you're listening to right now. We are the Fringe FM. You've probably noticed some changes around here lately, but what we really want is to hear from you. If you like it, hate it, or you want some more, let us know. Email talkback@thefringe.fm. Leave us your thoughts by calling 501-777-5631 or message our Facebook page at The Fringe FM. This is the new Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience, Cosmic Passport.
Live Sunday nights at 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern on the Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk.
Wouldn't you love to have a really sharp memory? More than ever before, people of all ages are struggling with memory problems and brain fog. Whether your poor memory is age-related or due to the effects of chronic stress, you can now improve your memory while reducing stress with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. That's right, you get 2 products rolled into one. Some ingredients in Calm and Clever enhance memory and help retain newly learned information more effectively, while other ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce stress by maintaining healthy levels of the stress hormone cortisol. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. To sharpen your mind and feel calm and centered, try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll love the way you feel and think. To order Calm and Clever, call 1-800-728-9948 or visit calmandclever.com. 1-800-728-9948 or calmandclever.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Oh, you know what I like about me? This is Rich Giordano, host of the Paranormal Code. No, I'm serious. The show's on twice a week now, Sunday and Thursday, on the Fringe.fm and Spreaker, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. Yeah, it's 2 hours. It's live. And I do a show like you've never heard before. So you're going to come here, you're going to get your information, you're going to be entertained. But you're also going to hear the truth like, you won't forget. Like you've never heard before. And for those of you who've been following, thank you. Thank you for talking me into this extra night. Now I'm on twice. Great. Hey, good for you, right? The Paranormal Code. This means something.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
Live Saturdays on the Fringe FM. The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. Dark Waters at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. Into the Paranormal with Jeremy Scott at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. Spaced Out Saturday with Joe Roop, 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern. And S4 with Eric Cooper, midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern. Live Saturdays on the Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk. Online at thefringe.fm.
Everything was still. Jesus been soon.
Kyle Fankhauser there. He'll be joining us next month. Tonight we are speaking with Dennis Stone, and we're talking about America Stonehenge. You can go to Project Compass, at Project Compass X on Twitter. Follow us there. The hashtag is Project Compass, and you can put in your questions, your comments, anything you want to relate to Project Compass or tonight's show. You can do it there. And Mark has been busy with Serenity building a new Facebook page, and that's Project Compass on Facebook. So you can go to all those social media outlets, and we got a lot more planned for the show. We have a lot of great shows in store for you. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. But tonight we are speaking with Dennis Stone, and we are in a very fascinating conversation. And I will turn it back over to Dennis Stone and Mark Eddy. Gentlemen, thank you again for being on the show.
Oh, yeah. Dennis, thanks. So far, we've been getting a lot of comments about, this is like some really interesting information. So I just appreciate, all the listeners who seem like they're just sitting there soaking in a lot of a little bit. I think we're pushing the envelope a little bit more on this show, and they're letting your information sink in. But anyhow, we were right before the break. You were touching on the transatlantic crossings. They're thousands of years before Columbus, and there was a lot of maritime engineering that had been done during the Egyptian times. The ships were sailing all through the Mediterranean. They're finding some of those faience beads that were made in Egypt in the Stonehenge area. That's mentioned in Dr. Child's one of Dr. Child's books. So, if Egyptian stuff is making it to the Stonehenge area, someone's is able to sail oceans. Dennis, what do you think about this? Building, engineering seaworthy ships 4,000 years ago. Do you think that's a real possibility?
Yes, I think that was. But if you go back much, much earlier than that, to the time when the first humans got to Australia, sometime before, I guess, 50,000 years ago, it was during the, I think, the interglacial period, but the oceans were a little bit lower than they are today. But you still could not walk from mainland to Australia. You had to go by boat. So sometime over 50,000 years ago, people were using some sort of watercraft to make that voyage, There are a number of islands they could hop, but obviously you wouldn't want to be swimming those great distances, with your family. So we're going way back before 4,000 years ago. And I think we've always had kind of a, kind of a prejudice against ancient people being very sophisticated. We thought civilization started 6,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, with farming, with building, constructions, and also the alphabet, the cuneiform writing, and then Egyptian hieroglyphics. But now a site like, and even the megalithic sites in Western Europe are thought to be people coming out of the Middle East, Africa, Northern Africa, Egypt, that area, into Europe in order to build Stonehenge and some of the 50,000 megalithic sites. But with radiocarbon dating and other dating methods, became available to us starting in the 1950s, they were able to show that these megalithic sites actually predate some of the sites in Egypt, or even like in Crete with the Minoans. So it wasn't like handed down technology. Some of these sites are actually older in Western Europe than they are in Egypt, for instance, as I mentioned. But now they found in Turkey Göbekli Tepe, which in 1994, some people felt it was a medieval site, and they began excavating it, and much to the surprise of the world, this site now, from the information I have now, it appears to date to about 11,600 years old. Some of the stones they moved a mile were 50 tons. They sculptured them into beautiful T shapes. They put all this beautiful artwork on top of them, and they seem to be astronomically aligned. So great engineers, they were astronomers, and they could move master stone builders, being able to move these multi-ton stones. And it actually dates, this kind of, it looks like it's, I'd call it civilization. It pushes it back twice as old as we thought. We did visit Malta 20 years ago, and in Malta, just below Sicily, they used to claim they had the oldest buildings, the oldest megalithic buildings in the world, almost 6,000 years old, just a little less than that. Well, Göbekli Tepe almost double dates, it goes back twice as old as that. So people were traveling the Mediterranean in boats. They say the Phoenicians had ships that could hold hundreds of tons of cargo, and they could hold a couple of hundred men on each ship. And around 600 BC, for Pharaoh Necho in Egypt, I believe is how it's pronounced, they sent Phoenicians on a mission to go right around Africa, and I guess it took about 3 years, and they went around the whole continent of Africa, as we know it today, and nobody at the time thought it could possibly be done. But the Phoenicians did it. And eventually Hanno sends 30,000 people out of Carthage, which was one of the Phoenician ports, and they settled 7 cities on the west coast of Africa. And I'd imagine sailing up and down there, getting caught in storms, you'd be blown off to the east coast of South America pretty quickly, But they sailed the Black Sea, they did the Red Sea, and they did the Mediterranean, and it looks like they might have even sailed up to England. One of the cities in Spain was a place called Gades, or I believe it's called Cadiz. I think it's called today. Or Cadiz is a city on the southwest part of Spain. That was a Phoenician city. Carthage was one of the biggest cities. They had 50 trading cities, and like I say, right around the coast of Africa too. So there might be one group that was coming over to the Americas, because inscriptions from the Paraíba inscriptions found in 1872 in Brazil were found eventually. It took many years of people looking at these stones to identify that it looks like it's Phoenician, and they identified what the script said. And then as far north as up in Maine, like Little Banana Island off Monhegan Island in Maine, inscriptions were found and identified again as Phoenician. And then up many tributaries going up in like Chesapeake Bay, all the way up the Susquehanna River to Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. They found over 1,000 stones that seemed to be letters of the alphabet, Phoenician alphabet, the 22-letter alphabet they had. So at our site, inscriptions were found in the 1960s, and 3 were found in that chamber in ruins I mentioned previously. In 64, we found 2, I believe. In 67, we found 1 more. And they were left in the museum on display for years until 1975, when the Dr. Barry Fell from Harvard University visited us for the first time, and then he came back many, many times studying our site and sites all over the Northeast, and then he extended his studies right across North, Central, and South America, where these other inscriptions were found. But our site, he identified Phoenician, he identified Libyan on another stone, and then what he said was Celtic inscriptions. And he felt they came out of Iberia, Spain and Portugal. The Phoenicians were there, the Celts came into there, and the Libyans from Libya came across the Mediterranean into Spain too. It was a melting pot of many cultures, including those 3, and some of the people would have been multilingual. And so he felt that was a jumping off point, Spain and Portugal, to coming into the Northeast where our site is, So, and he also found place names all over New England, mountains, rivers, valleys, and gorges, and he made lists of these. And he found the Native American name, Algonquin, with a certain meaning behind it. And he looked across the ocean, and he found the ancient Celts had same words with the same meaning. Word after word, he made list after list of all these words. So a couple could be coincidental. It's purely coincidence. Same word with the same meaning on both sides of the ocean, although it would seem to be a little bit of a stretch. But he found many, many, many words like that on both sides of the ocean that were the same word with the same meaning behind it. So he was looking at inscriptions. He was looking at place names, and then he was looking at, of course, the structures too. The kind of structures we have that do have a strong resemblance to the ones in Western Europe.
Dennis,
so I think people were traveling the oceans much earlier and further than we used to think, for sure.
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Dennis.
No problem, man.
I had a listener by the name of John Teeter was here. He commented about possible ley lines connecting with American Stonehenge, and I had the same question in my mind. We know that there was a lot of different people studying alchemy and earlier days of England, like John Dee, and they talked a lot about ley lines, and it's very possible that Stonehenge is probably quite possibly on those lines. What about America's Stonehenge? Would America's Stonehenge be on a ley line itself? I mean, we know we have 37 parallel and that kind of thing where we find quite often related to the paranormal. What have you found about that, Dennis?
Yeah, I think people looked at that. We've had people up on our site dowsing our site in the 70s and 80s, and even presently today, people dowse the site for both water and for ley lines. And 40 years ago, a book, I have it at our museum. I wish I had it in front of me today. But one of the authors was Francis Hitching, and there was another famous author. There were actually 4 different ones, and 2 of them were from England, I believe. But it was actually published in England. And it was a whole story about our site. And they doused the walls, and the walls run all over the place up on our site. And they believe that's where the water was, below the walls, in kind of in the not straight lines. They just follow the walls. The walls, I guess, were following the water, the aquifers, or water underneath the surface, I guess, according to, the person doing the dowsing. But the straight lines, the ley lines were the straight lines, and they were basically off our astronomical alignments. And what caught my attention when I was reading this book just recently, because I haven't seen the book probably in 40 years, is my son, Kelsey. He was using Google Earth back in 2012, and there's a stone that was out near my dad's house, a big, gigantic arrowhead-shaped stone. It was probably 1,000 feet from the main site. It stood up, and he wondered if it was on the north alignment. So he just started using Google Earth just to, play around with it and see if that line goes through we do have a true north alignment, but hundreds and hundreds of feet beyond that true north alignment, he ran that line, and he saw, gee, it does go right through that stone. So that, I don't think that's a coincidence. That stone was stood up intentionally by somebody. It was part of the bedrock at one time, and it's a very, very large, it's taller than me. It's a very, very tall stone. But then he started going on some other avenues, like the summer solstice sunrise, and that's a pretty neat-looking alignment. The stone has an asymmetrically shaped top to it. Most of our alignments have like an arrowhead with a point in the middle, but this has a point on the top left. And there's a stone circle halfway between that and the central astronomical center of our site. And that elliptical-shaped circle is where we think they actually would stand. Watch the top of that rock, and 90 degrees to the slope of that stone. If you look in a far distant horizon, about 4 miles, there's 2 hills that come together, forming a notch. And in Europe, they call them horizon features. They're actually including nature into the alignment, so it makes it more accurate the further your backsite to your foresight. And if you have a couple miles, that makes for a really nice alignment, especially for the solstice, where the sun seems to stand still for about 10 days. You get a better idea when the actual day of the solstice is. But he took that beyond that. He went right up through New Hampshire, Maine. He went right up past Nova Scotia, across the ocean. He used not Google Earth. He used Google Earth. He didn't use Google Maps. He used Google Earth because, the Earth is a sphere, not a flat map. And he went around the Atlantic and ended up in southern England, and he's been to Stonehenge before a couple times with us. And I said, that's kind of interesting. He goes, right, sort of near Stonehenge, I think, and he kept changing the scale, blowing it up, and eventually he said, oh, gee, it looks like it goes right near Stonehenge, and then eventually Stonehenge appears on the map, and the line goes right through the center of Stonehenge, and as he kept changing the scale, he realized it went through the largest trilithon at Stonehenge. So when you're standing there watching our summer solstice sunrise, the sun will actually if you had X-ray vision, you'd be looking across right around the curvature of the Earth. You'd be looking right at the largest trilithon at Stonehenge. And that was like, wow, when you saw that. And that made it on the episode of America on Earth with Scott Walters in 2013. So we looked at some of the other alignments, and true south of our site is Turtle Mound in Andover, Massachusetts. It's actually like an effigy line made out of stone. And I think at the dimensions of it, it might be something like about 40 feet across, but if you look down at it from an airplane or a drone, you'd see it shaped like a big turtle, because that's part of a lot of Native Americans' mythology, a turtle. But he took that alignment right south, right across, all the way down to South America, and it goes right by Machu Picchu, right by that site. Then we did a couple other ones. The winter solstice goes through Teotihuacan, the moon pyramid, which I've been to, and we were there in the 80s. Excuse my voice. The equinox sunset goes through Chaco Canyon, and the equinox sunrise goes through the pyramids, I believe in the Canary Islands. There's pyramids that most people don't know about. They're pretty neat looking. I've never been there, but they go right through there. So it might be part of that sacred geometry of the world, that these things are kind of tied together. These are special points where the energy is in the world. That's according to some people. And we've been in a couple books, even more recently than that 1978 booklet, that we are part of a grid, and our site is on one of those points. I'm trying to think of one of the authors, but it escapes me at the moment. But he does a map for the entire world, and he shows a lot of these very famous sites, and our site happens to be on one of those. And some of the lines, as I mentioned, go to some of these other places, So that's about what I know about the ley line. I do have a 1927 book, I think, by Alfred Watkins, Old Straight Track, and he's the guy that kind of got it going. I have one of the original books by him, from almost 100 years ago.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And I want to mention again to the audience that's listening that they can go to the gallery. We've put the link in Twitter. We put the link in Spreaker. But you can easily go to beyondthestrange.com and click on the tab Gallery for tonight's show. And we have some pictures that Dennis was nice enough to send to us. And one of them is of the equinox sunrise. And it says at the top, proof of alignment, and you can see where the sun seems to be sitting right on top of this pyramid-shaped type rock along a horizon. And that was something I wanted to bring up.
That's a really pretty picture, and we only discovered that about 2 years ago. Actually, that particular stone was aligned with that. But it's also aligned for the sunrise for winter solstice and for the summer solstice too. But it's pretty. It's a very close backside to foresight, but it really does work if you sit in this chamber where it has that 14-ton stone I mentioned earlier. It's called the double solar. It's actually the only two-story structure at our site still left. There may have been others, but some were damaged in the 1800s. People were taking some of the stones out, unfortunately. But if you sit in that structure, in different parts or corners of that structure, you'll see the summer solstice, winter solstice, or the spring and fall equinox sunrise. And it really looks pretty spectacular.
I think so. Mark, did you want to add anything to that? We got about 6 minutes before our next, 5 minutes before our next break.
Yeah. Speaking of, that photo, Dave. Dennis, next week is the spring equinox celebration you have there. Might seem more like the going back to the winter equinox, but it's really the spring equinox on next Tuesday. What kind of observations can people see? When's the site open? What's going on for that holiday?
Yeah, actually, we do open for the the different seasons. summer, winter, spring, and fall. And so Tuesday we'll be open for the sunrise in the morning. We'll be open probably, we'll probably get over there close to an hour before the sunrise. We'll get over there in the dark, so there's time for people to get up there. And then as long as the weather cooperates, right now it's looking like you say more like a winter solstice. And it might be due to the precession of the equinoxes, that 26,000 year cycle. But the seasons are slipping, I think, But and then and they'll be there for the sunset that evening. I think the celebration will be on Sunday, though. We have a lady; she's been doing it since the early '90s. She puts on sort of a celebration, and it's kind of a mix of Native American and maybe kind of Celtic, African kind of it's kind of a festival she puts on up there, and if the weather cooperates, if we have a storm coming, we may have to just cancel it, but hopefully we'll have good weather, it'll start to look a little more like spring. But we do that for the 4 seasons. We used to do it for the mid-seasons, the August 1st, November 1st, May 1st, and November 1st. They call them the cross-border days. But people weren't really aware of that, even though we put it on the website and we advertised it. So unless we have more interest in those dates again, the ancient Celts, for instance, those were the most important days, not the seasons, but what they call the mid-seasons, But we didn't have the attendance for those, We didn't have that many people show up for them, so we just, eventually just started just doing the 4 seasons, And I guess we have quite a few people coming up. Scott's friend David Brody, he's an author. He's been on a lot of these radio shows. He's written many really cool books.
He's been a guest with us.
He's been on your show, right? Yeah. He can bring a group of people up. Last time he came up was the winter solstice. He did have Scott Walters with him and a big group, And 2 years ago, he had Alan Butler, who was on the History Channel all the time. And Alan's really into the megalithic yard, and he does, research on these ancient sites all around the world. He's on TV quite a bit. And he's written many books. But we had about 30 people, and that's when I showed him that one of the serpent walls. That was 2 years ago on the equinox. So and actually it was beautiful out, no snow on the ground, and it felt more like summer, And I was able to show him some of the first serpents we found. And I think I had found 1, maybe 2 by that time, I guess. The one that's a zigzag one and that 30-foot small one. So that was 2 years ago. So people can come up. They can check our website out on that. And the celebration will be on Sunday, but the observation morning to night will be on Tuesday. I think it is the 20th.
Okay, and you're really how do people actually get there? You're not too far from Interstate 93.
That's right. Yeah, we're only about and they've redone all the roads. Even up to our place, they've redone all the roads, so it's a nice drive now. Not the New England potholes anymore, so they did a beautiful job on all the roads, widening them. So Route 93, Exit 3, North Salem, New Hampshire, and I think we're about 5 miles from Route 93. So and we have signs as you get closer to us too. State historic marker and everything. So you'll see those on the way up. So and Google, if you Google it, Google will take you right to our place too if somebody gets lost.
Oh, okay. There's Merle. Okay, we'll be back in a few minutes, and this has been a very quick show. Enjoying it.
There after Earth's creation, saw Mother Nature born, watched the continent rising through the cosmic storm, landed on a magic island, set up their new home, floated down from the firmament, they came to move from pole. Time travelers, faster than the speed of light.
Natural Health Solutions with Chris and Ronnie.
Hey, Ronnie, how you doing?
Great, Chris.
Now, you're the CEO of GetTheTea.com, right?
Yes, I am.
What is GetTheTea.com? I mean, is this tea you buy in a store?
Well, no, it's not. Life Change Tea is just that. Life-changing. Life Change Tea is an herbal tea that gently cleanses your body from intruders.
What do you mean by intruders?
Well, intruders are toxins, chemicals, GMOs, heavy metals, and more. They're in our food, in our water, in our air we breathe.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
And Life Change Tea will help you with removing these, as you say, intruders?
That's right, Chris.
Are there side effects with this tea?
Well, you might lose a little weight. When you clean your colon, you lose weight, you feel better, and you have more energy.
Wow. Ronnie, where can people purchase Life Change Tea?
Oh, that's easy. GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
Ronnie, I want to thank you for being on the show. People, don't forget, GetTheTea.com.
Hey, space travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
On the Fringe FM, we rock the paranormal talk.
Come own the night with us. Hi there, this is Dave Scott, host of Spaced Out Radio. Every Monday through Friday, right here on KTLK, the Fringe FM, I'm going to lead you down a path of mystery, intrigue, and suspense. So whether you've seen a UFO, had a run-in with Bigfoot or Dogman, or had ghosts running around your house, this is the place to be. Spaced Out Radio, right here on KTLK.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
35 million people in the United States suffer with debilitating migraines. If you or a loved one are one of them, you need to know about MiGrelief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist that formulated and patented the MiGrelief migraine formula. MiGrelief is a non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Try MiGrelief for 3 months and see the powerful difference it can make in your life, or get your money back, no questions asked. Go to MIG911.com or call 800-MIG-7354. You can change your life today.
So if you suffer from migraines, don't wait. Call 800-MIG-7354. That's 800-MIG-7354. Or visit MIG911.com.
Do you find yourself bored and longing to learn more about the mysteries and conspiracies behind our reality? Specifically, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific? What a coincidence, because that's exactly when me, Gigi, and my lovely co-host Cortana kicked over the airways with just the right amount of intellectual stimulation to give you that eargasm of conversational excellence that you deserve. So be sure to check out our show, Shift Happens, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific, that's 9 to 11 Central. And let's shake some talk radio tail feather, shall we? Right here on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Sunday! Live Sunday on the Fringe FM. The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. Data Bites with Space Boy and Sir Lana at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern. Beyond the Strange with Dave Cruz, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern. The Paranormal Code with Rich Giordano, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern. And Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth England, live at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. Sundays on the Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk. Online at thefringe.fm.
It was a long, long time ago. We came from a distant land, searching for a new way of life, freedom for every man. When a song really meant something and you hung on every word, and the feeling was that every man should be free as a...
All right, welcome back to the last part of Project Compass. Tonight we are speaking with Dennis Stone, and we are talking about America's Stonehenge. You can go to americastonehenge.com, I believe, or I'll let Dennis mentioned the website. I just brain farted there, right on live air. Wonderful. That's live radio for you. But anyways, we are having a great conversation, and I want to remind everyone to go to beyondthestranger.com and go to the gallery tab, because we are going to get in depth with these pictures, and Dennis and Mark are going to go over these pictures, and you're going to want to interact with this. So once again, gentlemen, thank you again.
Yeah, so the website is stonehengeusa.com. Okay. Hey, Dennis, you had a chance to look at the photos Dave put up on beyondthestrange.com under the gallery section. The photo of the pavilion during the blizzard looks like you guys really got hammered in the Northeast. You have to take a snowmobile to work. Okay.
We did indeed.
Yeah, the alpacas look like they were getting through it.
Oh yeah, yeah. They got good fiber on them. They got a good coat of fur right now, so they're doing pretty well. But they're waiting for spring too.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. But there's one of the more interesting photos that you sent to us. It's the second one down in the gallery. Was the west wall being rebuilt? That's I don't know how deep that is. What, maybe 5 feet?
Yeah, it's a little. Yeah, the height of that wall, we have the measurements on it. I could stand there. I'm about 5'7", and if the roof slab is on that structure, I could, stand up without my head hitting the rock. So.
Okay. Yeah. It does look. Yeah, like could be found at some Orkney Island chambered tomb. But what when the dirt was removed to put the wall back in place, was any of this dirt contaminated with say some of the patties, garbage, or anything like that? When you're digging down that far on the site, or around one of these walls, is it uncontaminated soil?
Well, you're gonna, the excavations began. One of our anniversaries of this last year was a 80th year of research, and Mr. Goodwin, did excavations back then, and he would come across both historic, and as you go down, you get it below that into the prehistoric era. You would find different artifacts from the Patty family, and they were there in the 1800s, and actually, the first Patty bought a piece of property, one part of the hill, in 1734, and 10 years later he bought a second piece of land, and that's, we think, included the site, where the site is today, the main site. And then after 1750, we think, his name was Seth Patty, Sr., we think he could have built a house there. We're not sure if he did or his son Seth Jr., but by 1802 the land goes to a Jonathan Patty, and in a quitclaim from his mother. And then he had a family of 6 kids. He had 2 sons and 4 daughters, and he was a shoemaker, a 5th-generation shoemaker. So we do find artifacts in the late 1700s going into the 1800s and up to today. And then we have, below that, we have found on the north wall of that chamber you're mentioning, that's where we did the 1967, 69, and 1971 excavations. And the first one in 67, they got a piece of pine root growing through that north wall, which they dated to 1690 AD. So it put it back before the Patty family had even purchased a piece of land on that hill, which again didn't include the site at that time, but 10 years later. And in 69, we dug down, we found charcoal, and they dated that to 3,000 years old. And in 71, adjacent to that, they found some more charcoal that dated to 4,000. And below that, they discovered the bedrock had been removed. There's an instance of that bedrock being removed and being used for building purposes. And then the wall was built for the chamber in ruins, and then soil very slowly starts to accumulate. But in that charcoal mix, those two different charcoal mixes in 69 and 71, they found hammerstone, rubbing stone, stone scrapers, and stone spallings. Where you strike a stone, you get the little flakes, and you're doing that percussion flaking. And they found that in the mix, too. So that chamber is the one also where we found the 3 inscriptions. So that chamber actually has a lot of things going on with it. And it faces true south. The floor of it is bedrock, and it was quarried bedrock. Some people in the mainstream call these things root cellars. Root cellars usually have a clay or dirt floor, and the structure is facing the south. That's not the direction you really want to face a root cellar to try to keep your vegetables, kind of climate controlled. You don't want it in the sun, the entrance of it. It also has like a little window facing that direction too. It has a core belling on the 3 walls, and it is trapezoidal in shape. And the roof slab weighs somewhere around 6,000 pounds, maybe a little bit more, and its lintel stone weighs over 1,000 pounds. But yeah, you could see when I was in France with my wife for the first time in '84 out near Carnac, we were riding bikes, and I happened to take a turn. My wife went straight down this road because I saw a sign. Something looked interesting to me on the sign. I and went into this thicket, and there's a structure in there. I found one of these megalithic structures because Carnac's just full of those megalithics, the standing stones and everything. My wife continued. I didn't see her for the next 3 hours. I did catch up with her at the hotel. She was kind of ticked off at me. I didn't know where she went. I knew she went straight, but she didn't come back, and I didn't have a camera at the time. She had the camera. She had her Nikon. So I didn't get any photographs, but when I got to the chamber, the roof was still on it, unlike the one at our site. And I looked at it and I said, my God, this looks just like our structure. I don't know the orientation. I was just north, south, east, and west. There's a lot of the megalithic sites there, but it could be a twin to our structure. As you said, even up in the Orkneys, there's some similar type structures too. But that one really caught my eye, and I've never been able to find it on the Internet. You can find Carnac. You can find all those stone rows. You can find a couple of other structures, but I've never been able to find that on the Internet, that particular structure.
Okay. It just, that building just doesn't look colonial, like a colonial root cellar.
Yeah. But, exactly. You find drill marks, too. A lot of the historic stuff, you'd find the modern drill marks where they split stones, starting around 1800 or just before that. So that's one site. You don't see you see dry stone construction. No cement was used in the original construction to put the stones together. And you don't find the drill marks, So those are, and then we have stone roofs. And Mark, most of the historic foundations, around New England, they had wooden structures on top, But ours have stone roofs, and that's really not typical of what our forefathers were doing. There may be some exceptions to that, but for the most part, these great big slab roofs were not what our forefathers were making,
Yeah. Okay. No, I just wanted to, just roll out the colonial root cellars. Then, we scroll down to the next photo on the beyondthestrange.com gallery page. There's this, 10-inch long groove. What? That was in the back of a chamber, I think. Do you know what that was?
Yeah, I think that's the one that is on the lintel stone.
Yeah, that sounds right. It's like a wide. It's like 10 inches long and like wide enough to put your finger in there.
Initially, when we saw it we were cleaning that whole thing during that restoration work because that west wall was in danger of collapsing because there was a lot of organic material. It had actually been dug. Part of that had been dug out in the 1960s during the excavation, and I think Goodwin did a little bit around there in the 30s, but in the 60s they really opened that up and then backfilled. They didn't go all the way down, I don't think, to the bedrock like we did, but they opened it up, they backfilled it, and when they got a lot of dirt in there, the dirt freezes with a lot of moisture in the winter, and that freezing cycle was causing that wall to become unstable. The other thing is the structures are strong when you have the stone roofs. Once, like that big roof fell in at some time, possibly due to an earthquake, and its lintel stone fell down too, that makes the walls kind of unstable. They don't have all that tonnage on top holding it together. So once you take the roof slabs off, all of a sudden the walls become weakened quite a bit. But with the organic material freezing, and thawing, it was causing that wall to move to the east. So it was in danger of coming down. So that's the reason we really did that project 2.5 years ago. So we found that little groove on the lintel stone. It was covered with, dirt and stuff. Nobody ever noticed it. And people had been in there in 1964. They were attempting to do the same thing we did 2.5 years ago. They wanted to put the roof slab back on top, get the roof slab out of the chamber first, excavate it, and then put the walls upright and put the roof slab back on to protect the chamber from further decay, I guess. They found those inscriptions in 64 and 67, as I mentioned, but they never noted that. I thought it was a drill mark at first, but it's actually flat. It's not round. It's actually a flat groove, and it bends. There's actually like a bend in it. You do a drill. It usually goes pretty straight into the stone. You use like a star drill or even we have the hydraulic ones today, or electrical ones that can actually drill into the rock, and it's a straight hole pretty much. This one actually curves and it's flat, so it's not a drill. It'd be a perfectly round hole. It's flat on the bottom. So we're not sure what its purpose is, Mark. But I did point it out to a stonemason who's very familiar with historic quarrying and everything, and he didn't really have any idea what it was either. So it's still a mystery to us.
Okay, and Dennis, we have now like 9 minutes, so we need to get through a couple more photos pretty quickly. Sure. We've covered the. I think that's the autumnal equinox over one of the stones. That's the next one. And then we get this, really fascinating one of these two really long slabs that were unearthed. They were, I don't know how, the people are going to be moving those from the quarry pit to wherever they were going to be placed. Those stones are laying parallel to each other. Could they have been put there for a chamber, and they were going to put some slabs for a roof?
So it's the one that's the propped up stone. Because I looked at these earlier today.
Yeah, there are two side parallel to each other on both sides of a tree.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to look at the picture right now. I think that's the one. Let's see, I got it right here. I think it's one of the quarry. I think it's one of the. So that's, wait a minute, my phone's messed up here a little bit. Those two are the ones we were working on not too far from the watch house. And it was pointed out to me by kind of a teacher who does research. He does a lot of research, and he actually put out a really nice YouTube video on us just recently, too. But he said it looked like the spiral of a snake, and that's what got me going on the watch house being possibly a serpent. And that was about 1.5 years ago. And it looks like a spiral, and then it goes down to the watch house, and the watch house kind of is like the head. And then we did an excavation, and that's where we found the two-handed hammer stone I mentioned. And also, actually, 3 of the stones show that the edges were worked by percussion flaking, and we had no idea. We've been walking by that. That is on our processional path between the watch house and the main site, because we've been walking by that since we opened the site up in 1958. So, our 60th anniversary is coming up this summer. And we always wondered what that was. We thought it was part of a lunar major south alignment. And we're not sure whether that is or not. That has to be confirmed even after all these years. Somebody's going to have to resurvey that and see if it is part of that lunar cycle. But it looks like a spiral. And so we don't know what that complex is. One of the stones definitely looks like one of our sunrise marker stones. It has that big arrowhead shape, and the edges of it have been all dressed or shaped by percussion flaking, it appears. So, and we found that fact out after David Stewart Smith had passed on. I wish he had been there to look at that. I think he would have been quite surprised because he's been walking by that stone since he first visited us in 1978, and none of us knew, until we got the dirt off it. So that's what that is right there. It's kind of interesting looking. We think it's part of a spiral. It might be part of the lunar alignment. So we have more work to do on that particular feature.
Can I just jump in real quick? I'll notice on the next picture, Mark and Dennis, it's for the serpentine wall picture.
Okay. Yep.
At the beginning of the serpentine wall or the end, however you want to look at it, that on the top, it looks almost like a turtle. Is that right? I mean,
oh yeah. Let me look at the picture. That was pointed out by Pete, that assistant. He thought that looked like a turtle last week when he was looking at it because I started opening that up, all the brush. I spent an hour in there cleaning that 170-foot wall, getting all the brush away from it for the first time ever. And then I thought it was a serpent wall, and I still do. And he takes me on and goes, "We'll call this the turtle because look at it, But that's the out in Colorado when that lady was doing her Skype presentation, when she showed her serpent wall. Hers looked just like the head and the back where the body starts, just like that in Colorado. The same shaped head. It's kind of a triangular shaped head, and then the wall behind it. And that's the one my wife and I almost jumped out of our seat and said, "That's ours. That looks like ours." So, but it kind of looks like a turtle too. But it's kind of has a long body, and it kind of goes back and forth a little bit. And one part gets wider. And it's been suggested that when a snake eats, when a snake eats its prey, it goes in the body, and you can actually kind of see it go through the snake. It gets bulged, like a bulge. Mm-hmm. And that's what some of the ones in Connecticut, too, in the body. It actually gets fatter, like it ate its prey,
Oh, okay.
It makes the wall wider. Yeah, but it does have a turtle-like look to it, too.
Yeah, and Dave, you have the Berkeley wall out by you. I think that was featured on Scott's show towards one of the last, about the last season.
Yeah, that's not too far from me at all.
Yeah, so we're kind of covering all these unique walls all across America tonight, and then
up to California, absolutely, all the way up to California, definitely, yeah.
Yep, and the last photo is you. Took that one recently, in between snowstorms, but you can see where you're using a chipper to line the pathways. You have all kinds of beautification projects in the works. You have testing you want to do. So, we're down to the last 2-3 minutes. You just want to just tell people what they can see, maybe what you have in the works for testing somewhere down the road.
Yeah, I mean, the line technology is wonderful. LiDAR, the whole country's been LiDAR. I think it's this year. It's all going to be done. The whole country, the U.S. government paid for it. The LiDAR is a very useful tool. They're finding all sorts of interesting things, including 60,000 new sites in Guatemala, Mayan sites, and they're going to call it the Snake King site, I guess, like snake comes in again, But thermal imaging, and the gentleman, I think he moved in from the West Coast about a year and a half ago, and he has that company, and that thermal imaging he's been using it at our site, except he hasn't had the temperature he needs so far, but he's taken thousands of pictures, and so we're looking at doing that, and maybe laser scanning would be great, too, to measure the structure so we can tell what unit of measure was used on it. And also ground penetration radar, which we used at our site 20 years ago. I'd like to get that back, to look for different features that you can't see when you're just walking around there. So we've got some things kind of going on, particularly that thermal imaging. I think that will be the next thing we'll be working on,
Okay. And, so next Tuesday, March 20th, you have the vernal equinox celebration going on from sun up to sundown. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and our website will have that information too. And there's a phone number to call if somebody needs or they can send us a text message too. Either way, we're happy to try to answer the questions for them.
Okay. And people can go to stonehengeusa.com for updates, snowshoeing over the next few days, if they can get out, get out of the house.
Exactly.
But you are planning on moving ahead with the summer solstice next Tuesday. In June, you have the summer solstice going on all day. Anything else you want to plug? We're almost out of time.
Sure. Yeah, the Earth doesn't go around the sun in a circle; it goes around an ellipse. And I have a stone that's standing. We've known about since we've both been there, and in the 70s with the astronomy going on. I think the stone is called the megalithic equinox, and it actually divides the year into 4 equal parts. You can divide the year in half with it. And looking at the measurements recently, I came across our Dr. Winkler, the astronomer that worked on our site 20 years ago from Penn State. And I finally found the information I need, and I think I might be able to prove what that standing stone is, that it actually is the divider. The true equinox is about a 10-foot stone that's fallen that we found in the 1970s by survey. To the left of that, if you're looking to the east, I think this is what they call the megalithic equinox. So it's something I'll kind of see if I can do this week if the weather cooperates. Go out and actually watch it.
Okay, cool. Well, we're down to Dave. How are we doing time? Almost out of time. This has been a great evening. Got lots of positive comments. Is there any other last minute things you want to cover?
I think that's it, Mark. We are almost out of time, but I want to just thank Dennis one more time for an excellent interview and a wonderful show. And, next time we'll definitely get some more pics of America's Stonehenge and make it even more interactive if we can. So it's been a fascinating evening. Thank you again, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, and thank you, Mark, and I'd like to thank the listeners. Thank you so much, and I hope you get on your show again. Maybe we'll have some more, some new news for you next time. But have a happy equinox, too.
You too as well. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you,
very
Dennis.
much. Have a great night now. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, I just want to remind everyone that we've got quite a bit of new and exciting shows coming up. We can't go into detail, of course. We're almost out of time. But under the Facebook Project Compass, go check it out. We'll have more links. We'll have some more promotions. Get the word out. Follow us here on Spreaker. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. And let's build this show and this community. And Mark, another great show.
Tonight was terrific. You don't want to miss next week. That's going to be we have 2 exciting guests that you don't want to miss.
All right.
I don't want to spoil it yet, but it's we'll be covering some fascinating material.
Excellent material. Thanks again, Mark. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week, bud.
Take care. Have a good week, everyone.
Good night, everyone. See you next week.